I know what you're thinking. I can already see the comments in my mind's eye. What's the point of this title, man? Like, you didn't tell us anything in the title. What's happening, man? It's morale. Morale. Okay, I'll watch the video. Here we go. So why is morale so important for you that I'm willing to call it the most important thing in the game? Well, let me show you. Let me take you back in time. We'll like just open the book. Yeah, normally you're not in this situation where your morale looks the way that our morale looks. Yeah, at this point it's totally morale. It's the mentality. Our team's morale is in the dumpster right now. But the issue is that the morale is where it is. I ended up in a position where morale was my worst enemy. There was nothing massive wrong, but we were still getting absolutely handled. And there was only one thing that could cause that, and it's something that I just haven't made a video about before. Amazingly. Am I even doing my job? The morale of your team and the mentality of your team, it is the foundation that a successful team is built off of. If you have a great tactic, but your team has terrible morale, there are things that will happen that will be completely out of your control. If this dynamic section, and particularly what we're talking about today, is this, the representative of the morale in the middle, if that is down, your only option is to try and turn it around, or you have to fundamentally change everything you're doing to try and give yourself a chance. And I'll go over what I did to get myself out of that hole in the streamer showdown at the end of the video. But right now we need to talk about what you need to be looking out for. This is a fantastic video idea, by the way. If you want to be able to give me video ideas like this, I got it from Twitch. I stream live and things like the streamer showdown where I compete against a bunch of other streamers, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm clearly not wearing any costumes at all. The link's down below to that. If you can't make it, we also now have a live channel, which I'm going to figure out how to put in the featured channels at some point. I need a Google tutorial for that because I'm actually not that fluent with the YouTube thing. All the links are down in the description. I hope you enjoy them. Onward. So the development of the morale side of the game in Football Manager is more recent than the basic, you know, how good are the players, where are the players, and what are your tactics like. The last couple of years, Football Manager has taken its morale game and just put it through the roof. They've added feature after feature. They've expanded the dynamics section to where we now actually have 7 tabs. 6. Oh man, I can't count. I can't count at all. And what a lot of these new features do is they create a more complicated route to happiness, which of course is very difficult to attain in real life. Where's the happiness? Like a Billie Eilish song. But these tools, if you haven't explored them in the last year or two, are advanced warning systems essentially for when somebody might not be happy. You can actually see it coming in the future. The most obvious advanced warning tool is literally the happiness tab. You click on the happiness tab and it breaks down the happiness of every player at the club. It's their happiness with training, with treatment, with club, with the management, which would be us, and playing time. It then sums up an overall happiness and provides you with a morale. And you can see there are a bunch of different options. You have concerned, which, hello, this is the advanced warning system. You have satisfied, you have delighted, and you'll notice that Excalibur X Nader Guerrero, wearing my Genetos save that I play on Twitch, is concerned about his playing time. This is not being represented in his morale. It's not being represented in his overall happiness. Yet, X Nader Excalibur Guerrero is concerned. And this is that simmer before the boil of when they come to you and they say, boss, I need some more playing time, or they ask to go out on a loan, or whatever they will come to you and say. You can see it coming before. So if you have a good memory, be sure to just check on this if you're worried about rotation and playing time in particular every month or so. If you don't have a good memory, set a reminder on your calendar in the game every month. First of the month, check in the happiness section to see if anybody is not happy with their playing time. This is going to be in your run-of-the-mill experience where the biggest source of random unhappiness will come from. And that's the first part. We have our happiness section. But now for the overall team morale, because this is not necessarily just an individual game. You're not going to have one person whose morale is straight up and one person whose morale is straight down, unless the guy that's straight down just really hates you. You stole the last nacho or something. That was it? That was what you came up with? There's something important I want you to remember at this stage, and that's that Miles, the person that made the game, actually said that everything in the game affects everything else. Let's check the tape. Well, that's a very interesting question, Bob. Everything in the game affects everything else, and that's all I'll tell you about that. Everything in the game affects everything else. It's amazing how well we do. We keep that archival footage around all the time. So everything in the game is affecting everything else. Well, you have your traditional events that are going to really damage or help morale. I lost to Kelvin 7-1 in the streamer showdown. This obviously destroys my morale. This destroys my morale much more than losing 2-1 to Kelvin in the streamer showdown. You have to, if you can, tactically try and prevent yourself from getting blown out. This is why you shouldn't put 8 people up top if you're down 3-0 with 5 minutes to go, unless it's a cup match and you got absolutely nothing to lose. If it's a league match, you just concede defeat. Try not to give up any more goals and save your team morale, because the amount of damage that a loss like that can do is massive. On the flip side, you can actually receive a lot of morale damage if you're on a long win streak and you finally lose, or if you have an unbeaten season going for a while and you finally lose. When you're succeeding for a long time and lose, that is a particularly important loss for the morale. So you have your big events like that. There are other events that can shake up morale. The sale of a player and the purchase of a player. You might want to check, especially if the player being sold is pretty high up in the hierarchy, how your locker room atmosphere has responded after that, so that you can react accordingly with the ways we're about to talk about. Beating or losing to a rival, getting knocked out of a cup competition. If you're playing in the Champions League, for example, once you get knocked out of it, your team is going to be more deflated. It's hard for me to give you every example, but everything affects everything else. So think about it in a real life sense. If something happens, you get promoted, you get relegated, you hire a new assistant coach, you hire a new head coach for the youth team, that's going to affect how everybody in the youth team is feeling. Most of these in minor ways, but they can end up having huge impacts if they tick you down below a certain area, and all of a sudden your team's not performing as well and you have nothing to do with it. The other things that can stir this up are the individual player issues. Somebody wants to leave to go to a better team. Somebody wants to get a new contract. Somebody wants more playing time, depending on how influential that player is in the hierarchy section. If the higher they are, the more of a problem it's going to be when they come to you with those individual things. And then when you go to dynamics, there's an issues section, which is empty because Zalando Escobar is beloved in Colombia. He's the greatest coach in the history of Colombia. It was me the whole time. When those issues pop up, they will be here. It will tell you if you've made any promises, and it will tell you what the issue is about exactly. All right, so I've gone to my Bate save where I know a bunch of people are going to be mad. If you made a promise, you can hover over it, and it will tell you how many days left you've complete the promise and how much in progress it is. Let's go back to the other save now. So those are all the things outside of the games that can affect your team's mental state in large or small ways. Now, how do you actually combat it? The first, most important, this is more important than anything else I'm going to tell you in this entire video, team meetings. If you do not use team meetings to combat bad morale, you have been missing a golden bullet the entire time you've been playing Football Manager. If you do, congratulations. Here's a star. Team meetings are essential. You click team meeting. Sometimes it'll say, well, you don't have reason to hold a team meeting. Hate that. You'll have a few options. If you're in the running to win a cup, if you're in the running to, like, if you're about to go into the Champions League final, there will be an option in your team meeting to say, hey, you know, great job. And if you expect to win it, then you say, we expect you to get the job done. If you don't expect to win it, then you say, we've done well so far. Who gives like, what happens now? Most of the time you're not going to be in a situation like that where you'll have a specific option, but you'll have, we've been doing okay, but you feel like you're getting a lot of draws, you're complacent, you want to kick in, we've been playing really well, I want to ensure our heads don't drop. These are the three options that I will typically use. This is relative to your expectations, not yours, but the club's and the players' expectations at the beginning of the season. So if the expectation at the beginning of the season was, we're going to finish mid-table, and all of a sudden you're in 5th, you're competing for European places or continental places wherever you're managing, and then you lose like 2 games, and you go to the team and say, I don't want our heads to drop here. they're going to look at you like you got three eyes. They will not understand why you're mad about how well they're playing, because you just lost 2 games, but you're still top 6 and you weren't supposed to be top 10. So you have to keep that in mind. Don't reevaluate what your players think is possible for them on the fly, because a bad team meeting is just as dynamic as a good one in the wrong direction. You can completely torpedo your entire team. Everything else we talk about might help you correct that over time. So you've been fantastic all season, or we're in danger of undoing all our good work with our recent bad form. You can try that in the situation that I just talked about, and it's more likely than the heads don't drop. The most common thing to hit here is don't drop your heads. Bad runs, don't drop your head, and it will everybody up. Everybody. Well, that was unnecessarily sassy. I'm not saving this, by the way. I just wanted to see what happened. I'd recently held another team meeting, so was none too pleased. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. The team meetings, you obviously, as I just proved, can't hold too often. But when you get into a stretch where you need to kick on, or where you want to maintain your momentum, or you want to turn your team around, there is simply nothing close to as good in just immediate dividends as a team meeting. The other things you can do, you can go to the players themselves and praise their conduct. This is on interaction, praise conduct. In very rare circumstances where a player not allow themselves to have their conduct praised, it will tick them up 1 in morale. This is not something you can repeat over and over again. Based off my experience, you can do it 2 times in pretty quick succession. If you try and do it 3, then it just doesn't work. I mean, it's like praising for anything. And the other thing you're going to be praising is you get those training emails. If you don't, go to staff responsibilities, go to training, and receive training emails for your club. You get a training email about ratings each week. You have the option to praise and criticize all the players. Do it every week, unless the positive is like 7.5, then they'll probably get mad at you for praising because they have higher expectations of themselves. 3 weeks in a row is a no-go for me. 2 weeks in a row is good. The only instance that it won't tick the morale up 1 notch is if that player currently is in the issues section for something. Their morale will not move when you get on them about training. Just something to keep in mind. Then there's having a good captain. A good captain is somebody that has a lot of leadership. Who's my captain here? Johnny Cano. He's got 14 leadership. He has 12 teamwork. Those are 2 of the 3 things that are very important for a good captain, because when somebody comes to you that is mad about playing time or any of the other things I listed earlier, the captain's a get out of jail free card. He can just erase it by talking them out of the problem. So it's leadership, teamwork, and what, class? Like Dora the Explorer, how good they are. If the person is not at the top of the hierarchy, which is a combination of how long they've been there, their personality, and their skill level, Johnny Cano's my best player. You're much more inclined to listen to that guy than our hypothetical bench player who's eating a meat pie in the second half because he knows he's not playing. Sounds good though. I'm kind of hungry. So when you get those emails that pop up, use your captain. There's nothing that could go wrong with it unless your captain doesn't like you, but that's another video. There's also something you can do in training. Every week, if you have issues with your locker room atmosphere, you should be doing team bonding. So you just go into training, you right-click an empty spot, you go to extracurricular, and you click team bonding. Team bonding greatly increases happiness. It takes a while, obviously. You can only do 1 a week, and so maybe over a couple of months you do a team bonding every week. It greatly increases happiness. Of course, all of this is happening so that you can see how your team performs on the field. And when you're looking at how your team performs on the field, you see body language. If you don't, you have to adjust your text size, by the way. If you don't see the body language in between highlights, fun fact. The body language also obviously provides you a hint of how the player is feeling in terms of their morale, and it guides you in terms of how you should give your team talks. Team talks are the last line of defense when it comes to morale. By the time you've gotten to the match, most of your morale work is already done. The team talk is your last chance to send your team out with the right mentality, or perhaps fix any issues you have mentally. Now, there's a ton of team talks. I'm going to make a devoted team talk video at some point down the line. But here's what you need to understand when you go into team talk, since I won't go through the individual options. It's a balancing act, okay? Here's our balance beam, right? And on one end is pressure. On the other end is confidence. You want to make sure that your team feels enough pressure that they'll keep performing. If there's no pressure at all in the balance beam, it goes up like that, that's where complacency comes in. But you also want to make sure that your team has enough confidence. If the confidence gets out of whack and they have no confidence, well, then they're just anxious all the time and they suck just as much for a different reason. So here, You want to keep them confident. So if you're losing, you want to say things that boost their confidence. Enjoy the match today. We were unlucky. Keep playing, praising guys that play well. If you're 0-0 at halftime, hey, great job. If you're winning, you want to praise them initially, obviously, but if you keep winning and you get complacent and every time you just come into the locker room and say, hell yeah, brother, excellent performance. If you're only up 1-0 and you should be up more, yell at them. I'm not pleased, so that you keep the pressure on. That's the balance you're walking. That's the last line of defense. But naturally, how much confidence and how much pressure a player takes in or needs on that balancing act, every player's got their own scale. It's largely a team-wide thing, but the player's personality, I mean, one of the hidden attributes is literally pressure. And this is where all your other morale work is going to end up getting them both motivated, because your morale work is A+. And eventually you'll be clicking on the dynamics section and it will feel just like you are managing tactics or scouting or any other part of the game that maybe you are more comfortable with. It's something that, just like all those other aspects, needs attention, and is something that honestly all of those other aspects, I can't say it enough times, are like built on top of the fact that your team is not super mad all the time. And it's true in real life too. The locker room's not there. You might as well not even show up. So just pay attention to it. That's the most important thing in Football Manager, because there's really nothing else in Football Manager outside of coming up with a tactic that's so unbelievably bad that no one would actually come up with it, that can completely remove your ability to compete and nullify anything else that you're doing. And if you do find yourself with bad morale and you do everything you possibly can, what did I do over the weekend? Well, you should check out the Twitch to see what I do in these situations if that's something that's interesting. But park the bus, hang on till halftime, say, great job, dudes, and hope you score a set piece goal that can help you turn that mentality around. Because when you get to a certain point, you just have to get lucky to get out of the hole, and you never want to be at that point. For the record, the reason that happened to me in the streamer showdown was the reason it happened to be the streamer showdown was they didn't allow team meetings. Now me and my wigs are going home. I'll see you on another video.